Am I the a-hole for getting between my boyfriend and his aggressive coworker? I, 25F, have been with my boyfriend, Matt, 27M, for 3 years now. He's my best friend, and we have a great relationship. At least, we did until his new coworker, Jake, 30M, entered the picture. Matt and I live together, and while we both work demanding jobs, we always make time for each other. He works in a small but competitive marketing firm, and things seemed fine until about 6 months ago when he started mentioning this new guy, Jake. At first, it was casual. Jake is super competitive. He always tries to one-up me in meetings. Then it turned into, Jake keeps making these jokes about how I must be whipped because I leave work on time to come home. It was irritating but manageable, until it wasn't. Jake started inserting himself into Matt's life in weird ways. He'd accidentally leave Matt out of work group chats, only to claim it was a mistake. He'd organize after-work hangouts and conveniently forget to invite Matt, except for the one time he did, just to spend the whole evening making passive-aggressive comments about how Matt had it too easy and probably couldn't handle real pressure. He even made some pointed remarks about me, implying I was the reason Matt didn't let loose like the rest of them. Matt brushed it off. He's just like that with everyone, he said. I don't want to cause drama at work. But then, things escalated. A few weeks ago, Matt came home from a late work event looking pissed. Apparently, Jake had cornered him at the bar and straight up asked why he was wasting his time, being tied down so young. When Matt told him to back off, Jake laughed and said, "We'll see how long that lasts." I was livid, but Matt told me to let it go. He's just trying to get a rise out of me, he said. I wish I had. Fast forward to last weekend. Matt's company was hosting a big networking event, and I was invited as his plus one. It was a fancy event, cocktail attire, and I was looking forward to meeting some of his colleagues. The moment we arrived, I spotted Jake across the room, already nursing a drink and watching us. The night went smoothly. At first, I mingled, met some of Matt's coworkers, and everything seemed fine. But then Jake made his way over to us. He was already drunk. He ignored me completely, clapped Matt on the back, and went, "Wow, man. Thought you'd be on a shorter leash tonight." Matt tensed but tried to laugh it off. "Good to see you too, Jake." Then Jake turned to me. His eyes raked over me, and he smirked. "Didn't expect you to be so hot." Maybe I should have been giving Matt a harder time about staying faithful. I felt Matt stiffen next to me. I expected him to say something, but instead, he let out this nervous chuckle like he was trying to defuse the tension. That was my breaking point. I turned to Jake, smiled sweetly, and said, "Funny, I didn't expect you to be so desperate for my boyfriend's attention. You talk about him more than I do." His smirk vanished. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, come on," I said. "You clearly have some kind of weird obsession with him. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were jealous of me." A few people around us laughed, but Jake did not. His face darkened, and he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You have no idea what you're getting into, sweetheart." Before I could respond, Matt grabbed my arm. "Let's go." I expected him to be proud of me, to maybe finally stand up to Jake. Instead, the moment we were outside, he lost it on me. "Why the hell would you say that? You just made things 10 times worse." I was stunned. "Matt, are you kidding me? He was harassing you." "He was harassing me. I had it under control," he snapped. "Now he's going to make my life a living hell at work." I stared at him, speechless. "So you'd rather I just let him keep disrespecting us?" He ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I don't know, okay? I just know that you made things worse." I was furious. I was hurt. And for the first time, I started wondering if I had misjudged this entire situation. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was in the right. I couldn't just stand by and watch Jake continue to disrespect Matt and me, for that matter. But the way Matt was reacting, it made me question if I had made things worse, like he said. For the next few days, the tension between us was thick. Matt didn't bring it up again, and neither did I. It felt like an elephant in the room. I noticed that Matt was quieter than usual, less affectionate, and more distant, and it started to eat away at me. I tried to reach out, to talk to him, but every time I did, he shut me down. It's fine, okay? I just need some space. That's what he kept saying, over and over. It was like the more I tried to get through to him, the more he pulled away. One evening, I decided to stop waiting for him to come around. I needed answers. I needed to understand what was really going on in his head. So, I confronted him again. Matt, we need to talk, I said, sitting down across from him on the couch. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. About what? About you and Jake. About this whole mess. He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. I told you it's fine. It's just work stuff. Matt, no. It's not just work stuff. It's clearly affecting you, and it's affecting us. He sighed, rubbing his face. I don't know what you want from me, all right? I'm just trying to keep the peace. The last thing I need is to stir things up with Jake. Well, he's got connections in the company. He's been there longer than I have, and he can make my life hell if I cross him. That hit me harder than I expected. He can make my life hell? I get it, I said quietly, but you're letting him walk all over you. I can't just sit here and watch him do that to you, to us. I love you, and I don't want to see you get hurt, Matt. He looked at me with a mixture of frustration and guilt. I know you're trying to help, but this is my problem, not yours. I'm the one who has to deal with him every day. I'm the one who has to face the consequences of speaking up. The silence hung between us for what felt like an eternity. My chest felt heavy, and I could see that he was torn. He was clearly conflicted. He wanted to stand up for himself, but he was afraid of the fallout. And I, on the other hand, felt like I was stuck between standing up for him and respecting his wishes to handle things on his own. Matt, I just want you to be happy. And if Jake is making you miserable, I don't want you to put up with it. He stared at me for a long moment, and for a second, I thought he was going to say something that would finally make everything click. Instead, he stood up abruptly and started pacing. I can't just ignore it, he said, running his hands through his hair. But I also can't risk making it worse. I'm not sure what to do anymore. I was confused. What do you mean? You have to do something? He turned to me, frustration flashing in his eyes. You don't get it, do you? If I take a stand now, Jake will make sure I never get promoted. He'll make my job miserable. And it's not just him. It's the whole office. They'll all pick sides. I felt a pang in my chest. So you're telling me you're willing to put up with this because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the floor, like he was deep in thought. Finally, he said, I don't know what to do, okay? I feel trapped. I didn't know what to say to that. I wanted to tell him to stand up for himself, to stop letting Jake control his life. But I also understood that the pressure of the workplace, especially when it involves someone as influential as Jake, was more complicated than I realized. But then something else occurred to me. What if this wasn't just about Jake? What if this was about Matt not standing up for himself in other areas of his life, too? What if this wasn't the first time he let someone push him around? I took a deep breath. Matt, this isn't just about Jake. This is about you not setting boundaries. You can't keep letting people walk all over you. Not him, not anyone, not even me. That stung, but it was the truth. Matt froze. What do you mean? Not even me? I paused. I'm not trying to start a fight, but I can't keep pushing for things to change if you're not willing to change yourself. I'm here to support you, but you need to be willing to fight for yourself too. If you're not going to stand up to Jake or anyone else, then how are we supposed to move forward? The room was silent, and for the first time, I saw Matt's face shift from frustration to realization. It wasn't just about Jake anymore. It was about him. Maybe you're right, he said quietly, finally meeting my eyes. Maybe I've been letting too much slide. The tension between us eased, but there was still an underlying weight to everything. I wasn't sure where we stood anymore, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe we were on the same page. But I couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of Matt standing up for himself, or the beginning of something worse? Matt didn't say much after that. We both sat in silence for a while, the air heavy with unsaid words. It was like we just scratched the surface of something much deeper, and I wasn't sure how to keep digging. The next day, Matt went to work and I stayed home, feeling a mix of anxiety and hope. I wanted him to take control, to stand up to Jake and prove that he could handle this. But I also worried that this situation was more complicated than we realized, and that there was no easy solution. When Matt got home later that night, he seemed different. He wasn't as tense, but there was something in his eyes that made me cautious. I had been hoping for an update on how things went at work, but he was being strangely quiet. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "It was fine," he replied, but he didn't look at me. He just dropped his bag on the floor and went straight to the kitchen. I stood up, walking over to him. "Matt, what's going on?" He paused, his back still turned. "I talked to Jake today." My heart skipped a beat. "What did he say?" Matt finally turned to face me, and I could see a mixture of relief and worry in his expression. "I told him to stop messing with me. I told him if he kept pushing, I'd go to HR. I blinked, processing his words. "Wait, really? You did that?" He nodded. "Yeah, I'm done letting him walk all over me." I was relieved to hear that, but there was something else that didn't sit right with me. "And what happened after that? Did he take it seriously?" Matt looked at me, his expression guarded. "Well, he didn't take it well, but I think he knows I'm not joking. He said he'd think about it, but he didn't push back like he usually does." I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he was still waiting for the fallout. "That's good, right? He's backing off?" "Maybe," Matt said, but he still didn't seem convinced. "But I'm not sure if this is over. I'm just waiting for him to find a way to retaliate." That's when I felt the pit in my stomach grow. It wasn't over. I could see the doubt in his eyes, the uncertainty that was still hanging over him. I wanted to believe that standing up for himself would make everything better, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. "You did the right thing," I said, trying to reassure him. "You stood up for yourself, and that's all you can do." Matt nodded, but I could tell he was still processing everything. "I hope you're right. I just don't know what's going to happen next." The next few days were tense. Jake didn't make any direct moves, but there was a noticeable shift in the office dynamics. People started acting a little more distant with Matt, and there were moments when I could see him grow frustrated, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I tried to be supportive, but I could feel myself growing more anxious. I was watching Matt fight this battle, and part of me felt like we were walking a tightrope, waiting for everything to unravel. And then it happened. Jake sent an email to Matt, copying the entire team, accusing him of trying to ruin the office culture and calling him ungrateful for the help he'd received from other colleagues in the past. The email was professional on the surface, but the underlying tone was clear. Jake was retaliating, and it was only going to get worse. Matt came home that night, face flushed with anger. "He did it," he muttered, throwing his phone down on the counter. "He actually went to the whole team, accusing me of being the problem." I stood frozen, the weight of it all hitting me. "What are you going to do?" Matt ran a hand through his hair, frustration clear in his movements. "I have to go to HR. I have no choice, but I feel like this is just the beginning. I've made myself a target, I could see the fear in his eyes now, the fear that everything was about to blow up. And as much as I wanted to comfort him, I knew the path ahead wasn't going to be easy for either of us. Matt was finally standing up for himself, but now we had to face the consequences of that decision. The following days were a blur of tense conversations and uneasy silences. Matt spent his evenings going over every detail of the email Jake had sent, trying to figure out what his next step should be. I could tell he was losing sleep over it, tossing and turning at night, unable to shut off his thoughts. One evening, I sat down beside him after dinner. Matt, have you thought about what you want to do with HR? I asked gently. He looked at me, his eyes tired. I don't know. I'm afraid if I escalate this, it'll just make things worse. But if I don't, Jake's going to keep pushing me. He's trying to turn the whole office against me. I could hear the frustration in his voice. I get it, I said, but you can't just let him control everything. You have to protect yourself and your reputation. If HR knows what's going on, they can intervene. Matt hesitated, then nodded slowly. I know. It's just hard. You know, I don't want to seem like I'm overreacting, but at the same time, I can't let him keep doing this. I placed my hand on his. You're not overreacting. You're standing up for yourself, and I'll be here to support you, no matter what. That night, Matt drafted an email to HR. He explained the situation in detail, outlining everything Jake had done. From the passive-aggressive comments to the public email, he was clear, professional, and kept his emotions in check. Once he sent it, he stared at his screen for a long time, almost like he was waiting for something bad to happen. The next day, things at work seemed oddly quiet. No one mentioned the email, and Jake didn't reach out to Matt. It almost felt like the calm before the storm. Matt came home that evening looking a bit more at ease. HR got back to me, he said as soon as he walked through the door. They're going to investigate, but they're also going to keep it confidential. They told me not to worry about any retaliation for now. I breathed a small sigh of relief. That's a good start, right? Yeah, Matt agreed, but his tone was guarded. But I don't know. Jake's not the kind of person who takes things lying down. I'm just waiting for him to escalate again. And of course he did. A few days later, Matt came home looking completely defeated. Jake knows I went to HR, he said, his voice low. He confronted me about it today. He made it sound like I was the one making everything uncomfortable. I felt a surge of anger for him. What did you say? I told him I wasn't backing down, Matt replied, though I could see the strain in his eyes. He said he was going to go to upper management and say that I was causing a rift in the team. He said I was too sensitive. I could feel my own frustration building. He's just manipulating the situation, trying to make you look bad. Yeah, but I can't just sit back and let him keep doing it, Matt said, rubbing his temples. I'm already walking a fine line with HR. If I get caught in any more drama, it could backfire on me. I could tell he was at his breaking point. The constant tension at work, the fear of retaliation, the guilt of getting HR involved. It was all wearing him down. I wanted to do something to help him, but I wasn't sure what more I could do. That's when Matt dropped the bombshell. I think I'm going to start looking for a new job. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Wait, what? Are you serious? He nodded slowly. I don't think I can keep dealing with this. It's not just Jake anymore. It's the whole environment. I don't want to be stuck in a place where I'm constantly fighting just to be treated fairly. My heart sank, and I didn't know what to say. I could understand why he was considering it. No job was worth this kind of stress. But I also didn't want him to feel like running away was the only option. Matt, I want you to be happy, but I don't want you to make this decision out of fear. You've worked so hard to get where you are. If you leave now, doesn't it feel like Jake won? He thought for a moment, his face conflicted. I don't know. Maybe it's not about Jake winning. Maybe it's about me not losing myself in this toxic environment. I could see the pain in his eyes. He was caught between two impossible choices: stay and keep fighting, or leave and start over somewhere else. But deep down, I knew that no matter what choice he made, I would be here to support him. It wasn't just about Jake or his job anymore. It was about Matt's well-being, and I wasn't going to let him make any decision alone. The next few days were a blur. Matt went to work with the weight of everything hanging over him, and I spent my days trying to keep myself busy, but it was hard not to worry. I knew this was taking a toll on him, and I wasn't sure how much longer he could keep going like this. One evening, a week after Matt had talked about leaving his job, he came home looking drained, but there was something different about him. His shoulders were less tense, and there was a faint glimmer of something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a while: determination. Maybe he didn't even sit down before he spoke. I did it. I handed in my resignation today. I felt a mix of shock and relief flood through me. Wait, what? You really resigned? He nodded, exhaling as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Yeah, it wasn't easy, but I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't stay in a place where I'm constantly under attack. It was either leave or let it eat me alive. I stood there, processing it. I understand, I said softly, even though part of me was still in shock. But what now? Do you have another job lined up? Matt's face was a little more peaceful than I had seen in weeks, but there was still an underlying uncertainty. I don't know, but I can't keep putting myself through this. I've been applying to some places, but honestly, I just needed to get out of there. It was affecting everything. My mental health, our relationship, everything. I stepped closer to him, wrapping my arms around him. I'm proud of you. This isn't easy, but you did what was right for you, and we'll figure the rest out together. For a brief moment, it felt like everything had settled. Matt had taken control of the situation, and it seemed like he had finally made a choice that was going to help him find peace. But I knew there was still a long road ahead. Resigning was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Matt focused on job hunting. I could see the stress start to creep back in when the interviews didn't go as well as he hoped, or when the rejections came in. He'd hide it at first, but I could tell when he was feeling discouraged. One evening, after a particularly rough interview, he slumped on the couch beside me, letting out a long sigh. I don't know if this is going to work, he muttered. I don't know if I'm cut out for this anymore. I put my hand on his, trying to comfort him. Matt, you are. You've got so much talent, and you've been through a lot. The right job is out there, and when it comes, it's going to be worth all this stress. He gave me a small smile, but I could see the doubt still lingering in his eyes. I just feel like I've lost my confidence. Jake really did a number on me. I don't even know if I can go back into a similar job after everything. Matt, I said softly, you're not defined by one bad experience. You're capable of so much, and the right place will see that. You don't have to go back into the same environment to prove yourself. We spent the evening talking about options, brainstorming things he could do to rebuild his confidence. Slowly, Matt started to open up about the things he used to love about his work before it became so toxic. He remembered why he got into the field in the first place, because it was something he was passionate about. As the weeks passed, Matt continued applying to jobs, but there was something different about the way he approached it. He didn't just focus on finding any job. He started looking for positions that aligned with what he really wanted, not just what he thought he could get. He was more determined now, less weighed down by fear. And then, one day, he got a call back for a job he had applied to weeks earlier. It wasn't just any job. It was a position at a company with a great culture, a place where people were treated fairly and with respect. I got it, he said, holding the phone to his ear with a grin on his face. They want me to start next week. I couldn't believe it. The relief in his voice was palpable. That's amazing, Matt, I said, wrapping my arms around him. You did it. You found something better. Matt's eyes sparkled as he hugged me back. I really did. It's like everything just clicked. I feel like I'm finally back on track. For the first time in a long while, everything felt right. Matt had fought for his well-being, stood up for himself, and had come out the other side stronger. It wasn't easy, and there were still some scars from everything he had been through, but we were both looking toward the future with hope. The journey hadn't been smooth, and I knew there would be bumps ahead, but we were ready for whatever came next. Together, Matt started his new job with a fresh sense of purpose, and it was everything we had hoped for. The environment was night and day compared to his old job, supportive, collaborative, and most importantly, respectful. Matt's colleagues immediately appreciated his skills and attitude, and he quickly fell into a routine where he actually felt valued. It was like watching a weight lift off his shoulders every time he came home with a smile, something I hadn't seen in months. He started talking more about his work with excitement, something he had lost along the way when he'd been fighting those constant battles. As for Jake, things eventually faded on that front. Sure, there were a few awkward encounters when Matt had to go back to the office for some paperwork, and Jake made some snide comments in passing, but Matt had long stopped caring. The sense of peace that came from leaving that toxic environment behind was priceless. It was clear that the real victory wasn't just leaving Jake behind. It was about Matt choosing himself and his happiness over a job that had taken so much from him. In the weeks that followed, Matt continued to thrive in his new role. He gained confidence every day as he received positive feedback from his new team. The best part was seeing him regain the spark he had when we first met, the passion for his work that had been extinguished by the toxicity of his last job. He had rediscovered that, and with it, a deeper sense of self-worth. There were still moments of doubt, of course. Matt would sometimes question if he had made the right decision when the weight of his career change hit him. Starting over, leaving behind years of experience for something new. But every time, I was there to remind him of the bigger picture. He wasn't just running away from something. He was stepping towards something better, and I could see how the change was already making him happier. For me, it was a learning experience, too. I had always tried to support him, but this situation pushed me to grow in ways I hadn't expected. I had to be patient and trust in Matt's ability to navigate tough decisions on his own. It was also about finding that balance, knowing when to step in and when to let him make his own choices. Watching him take control of his life and his career, even when it wasn't easy, made me proud. It showed me just how strong he really was, and it made me fall even more in love with him. We became even closer as a couple through all of this. I think, in a way, the pressure of his old job had put some strain on us, and with him finally free from that weight, we were able to reconnect in ways that we hadn't before. We spent more quality time together, talked about our dreams for the future, and began planning what came next. It felt like we were truly on the same team, facing whatever challenges came our way. Over the next few months, things really began to settle. Matt wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving, and that made all the difference. We learned how to handle stress and setbacks better, and we'd often talk about how far we'd come since the days of him dreading work and being stuck in a toxic office environment. There would always be challenges in life, but we both knew now that we were capable of facing them, as long as we had each other. So, here's where I'm at. I stood by Matt throughout this whole situation with his aggressive coworker, Jake. I helped him navigate the stress of being targeted and pushed around at work, and even stepped in a few times to encourage him to stand up for himself when I thought he wasn't getting the support he needed. When he was considering resigning, I supported him, though I wasn't sure if it was the right decision or if we were jumping the gun. He did end up resigning, and now he's thriving at a new job, but I can't help but wonder if I got too involved at times. Maybe I pushed him to make a decision he wasn't ready for? Maybe I shouldn't have been so involved in his workplace drama and just let him handle it himself? I can't say for sure if me stepping in made things better or worse, but I've been reflecting on it, and now I'm questioning whether I overstepped my boundaries as his partner. So, Am I the a-hole for getting too involved in my boyfriend's work situation and pushing him to leave his job? I'd love to hear other people's opinions on whether I crossed a line or if I did the right thing. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comment. I'd love to hear your opinions and experiences. And if you've ever been in a similar situation, feel free to share your story with us. Thanks for watching.